There we go. Okay, let me start that over. So my name is Alexis Goldsmith, and I'm the organizing director with Beyond Plastics. We are a national nonprofit project dedicated to ending plastic pollution. And today's info session is called Choose to Reuse, an info session on reusable containers in meal programs, and specifically senior meal programs and Meals on Wheels. So here's a quick agenda for today. So I'm going to give an overview of Choose to Reuse, which is a manual for reusable trays. Beyond Plastics released this in May. And then we'll welcome Renee Ashleman with the Aging and Disability Resource Center in St. Croix County, Wisconsin, and Becky Bruno, the Senior Meals Program Manager at Spectrum Community Services in Alameda County, California. And these are two programs that are doing reuse in different ways for Meals on Wheels. And then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. So the guide is available at beyondplastics.org/Meals on Wheels. That's our website. It's a digital guide, but you can print it if you need to. Here's what's in it. So we have lots of practical advice on how to wash your own trays, or how to work with a dishwashing service so that you can make the switch from disposable single-use trays to reusable trays. We have 4 unique case studies from Meals on Wheels programs that are already using reusable trays in the United States, and tons of additional resources, including a living list of where to buy reusable trays, sample language for letters to clients to return the trays, fact sheets on reusables and compostables, which you can use to share your share info about your reuse program or to give to funders and state legislators. We have a cover letter also for state legislators explaining why funding for reuse should be included in state budgets. And along with that cover letter, we have the memo that Beyond Plastics used in New York to ask the New York State Legislature to include funding for Central New York Meals on Wheels programs in the 2022 New York State budget. We also have a sample narrative for grant funding, thanks to Spectrum for providing that. And we have 2 calculators to estimate your budget for reuse and also the environmental metrics. So we developed these calculators based on the most common type of single-use tray used by Meals on Wheels, which is this 3-compartment number 1 polyethylene tray with a plastic film. So in order to use these calculators, all you would need to do is enter the information you already have. So the number of meals that you serve per year, the number of clients that you have, the cost that you're currently spending per single-use tray, and the cost of the single reusable tray. So I usually use $10 because that's about what the going rate is per reusable. And then if you have to buy a dishwasher, you can factor in that cost, and then it will automatically calculate the difference in the cost between what you're currently spending on single-use trays and what you'll spend on reusable trays. And then we also have this environmental calculator. So you can enter the number of plastic trays that you use every year, which should be the same as the number of meals that you serve per year, and it will automatically convert that into pounds of plastic waste and the amount of landfill space that you can save by switching to reusable trays. And I'll show this calculator in action a little bit later. So just a note on Beyond Plastics and why we're doing this project. So as I said, we are a national nonprofit project dedicated to ending plastic pollution. Our president is former EPA Region 2 Administrator Judith Enck, and I'm the organizing director. So I help grassroots activists around the country figure out how they can take practical steps to reduce single-use plastics in their community. And before I came to Beyond Plastics, I worked with the food pantries for the Capital District in the New York's capital area, doing referrals. So I was helping people to find emergency food services. So that really gave me an understanding about the intersectionality of this issue and just how mission-driven hunger organizations are. So thank you for all that you do to feed our community every single day. But this is why Beyond Plastics does what we do. So saving plastic waste is really, well, reducing plastic waste, not saving, is really important because plastic pollution has become one of the greatest social and environmental justice issues of our time. Each year, the United States discards more than 35 million tons of plastic. That is the most per capita in the world. And where is all this plastic coming from? Well, data tells us that single-use plastics are the largest source of the problem. Roughly half of all new plastic produced today is intended for a single use, which means it is used for a very short time and then it's discarded, where it persists in the environment for generations, or it's turned into air pollution in an incinerator. At the same time, almost all plastic is not recycled or even recyclable. Even though plastic products may show the chasing arrow symbol, this number is actually a resin code and not an indicator that the plastic is recyclable. In the United States, the plastics recycling rate is currently less than 6%. Food containers, in particular, are not recyclable because they are contaminated with food. If you use the plastic trays with plastic film, those are even harder to recycle because they're a mixed material, and that is not recyclable. If you use polystyrene trays, those aren't recyclable because there's no market for post-consumer polystyrene. And these black plastic trays, the sensors at recycling facilities aren't able to detect them, so they don't get sorted in with recyclables. So even though these containers might be advertised as recyclable by the manufacturer, they are not actually getting recycled. And the truth is, plastic is extremely difficult to recycle, and it's very expensive to recycle. And recycling has never worked to displace the production of new plastic. In fact, production of new plastic in recent years has been booming. Since 1950, the world has produced nearly 10 billion tons of plastics, which means that there is now more than 1 ton of plastic for every person on Earth. More than half of that plastic was produced after the year 2000. And production will only continue to increase unless we make deliberate decisions now to reduce our dependence on single-use plastics. Unfortunately, to be the bearer of bad news, much of the plastic that gets counted as recycled in the United States is actually shipped overseas, where it winds up in open dumps, neighborhoods, rivers, and beaches. Plastic waste dumped by wealthy countries has led to immense challenges for communities that have contributed much less to the problem of global plastic waste. The bottom line is that plastic is simply not recyclable, and we cannot recycle our way out of this problem. So the good news, and this is why we've made this guide for Meals on Wheels, is that we can quickly make progress to solve this problem with reusables, which actually work to displace new plastics. And reusables that reduce plastic waste also help mitigate climate change and environmental injustice. And the reason for that is plastics are made of oil and gas. In the United States, most single-use plastics today are made of fracked ethane gas. The production of plastic requires a long series of infrastructure to turn fossil fuels into plastic products. The infrastructure is very polluting. And in October of 2020, Beyond Plastics released a report on the life cycle emissions from plastic production, use, and disposal in the United States. Our report found that plastics are on track to surpass emissions from coal-fired power plants in the United States by 2030. The report also found that emissions from plastics contribute significantly to inequality in the United States. 90% of these emissions are released into just 18 communities. And these communities are 2/3 more likely to be Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. That being said, everybody is affected by plastic pollution. Because plastics don't biodegrade, but instead turn into microplastics through erosion, they can be ingested or inhaled from plastic in the environment and plastic packaging. So sorry for all that background, but I felt it was important to talk about what Beyond Plastics does and why we're doing this and why we want to help Meals on Wheels programs switch to reusable trays and the benefits of reusable trays to your programs or to your municipalities if you're a legislator or with the Association on Aging or an ally. So Meals on Wheels are uniquely situated to be a leader in reuse, even as you are working a leader in serving our older adults and adults with disabilities. And I commend you for your work on keeping people fed. Meals on Wheels are closed loop systems, meaning you're going to see the same clients again and again. The idea is that when new meals are delivered, the used trays are picked up and returned to be washed, sanitized, and used again. And reusables aren't just good for the planet, they can also save you significant cash if you're able to buy and wash the trays in-house. Here's an example of how much a moderately sized program can save. So we worked with the New York State Legislature to request funding for Central New York Meals on Wheels in the state budget to purchase reusables for their program. So in that memo to the state legislature, I did a cost analysis of how much this would save the Central New York Meals on Wheels or the Syracuse Meals on Wheels. So you can see they have 350 clients. They serve 200,000 meals per year, meaning they buy 200,000 of these 3-compartment polyethylene trays every year. And the average cost of those trays are 30 cents a piece. So they're spending about $60,000 on these trays. Well, to serve that many clients in reusable trays, which look like this, they would need about 840 trays. And I calculate that they need 2 trays per client plus 20% to account for lost trays. So upfront, the first year they would spend basically $8,500 on reusables. Then if they need to purchase a dishwasher, they need to factor that in, and an upper end commercial dishwasher is about $10,000. So the first year, they're going to have to front almost $20,000, but they would save more than $40,000 in the first year. The second year, they would save even more because they're only replacing the lost trays. They don't have to buy all the trays at the same time. And then just to look at how much this would save plastic waste, if we enter how many trays they're using a year here in our calculator, so 200,000, they would save 14,000 pounds of plastic waste and 350 cubic yards of landfill space every year by switching to reusables. So, are you in? I hope you are. I hope you're still with us. So stay with us for some methods and practical advice. And we're going to talk to 2 programs who are doing reusables already. So there's 2 main ways to do reusables for Meals on Wheels. And the first option is to buy and wash your own containers in-house. The pros are that this is the most cost-effective option, as reusables quickly pay for themselves. Even modestly sized programs, as we saw, can save tens of thousands of dollars a year. It significantly reduces plastic waste, as we saw, which is good for municipalities. It improves the food presentation and the client experience, and programs report that clients are happy to support a reusable tray program. Reduces greenhouse gas emissions because you're reducing those single-use plastics. And as I said, you're reducing strain on municipal resources by preventing the waste. The cons, because of course there's always pros and cons, are you have to pay up front to buy the trays. You do need a dishwasher and kitchen space, and it requires a change in kitchen workflow because normally, the trays would go out the door, and then the kitchen washes up and then they're done. But with the reusables, you're going to have used trays coming back every day, so people have to stay and wash those every day. If it isn't feasible to purchase and wash your trays, you may be able to contract with a dishwashing service. So the pros of this are that all the dishwashing is done for you. No dishwasher required. That's really nice. No need to buy the trays, so you don't have to front the money. Save space in tight kitchens. Still significantly reduces plastic waste and saves water and greenhouse gas emissions. There's almost no change to your kitchen workflow because you're using them exactly as you would have with the disposables. And it also supports a reuse economy, which is a good argument for legislators to support this because you're supporting that small dishwashing service. Cons, this does tend to be more expensive. Service is not available in all areas, but if you're in a major city, you're more likely to find a service. And the container choices are limited. So just to show you what you'll probably get with a dishwashing service is a clamshell of this type, rather than a separate lid and tray. This is from Redish, which is a service based in New York City. With either method, you need to be able to get the trays back in order to be cost effective and also to get those environmental benefits. So this is key for programs. And here are some ways that programs make sure they get their containers back. You can purchase a dishwasher safe label online or through a restaurant outlet. You can implement a tally system to keep track of where your trays are. Make sure to brief clients when they enroll in the program that they will be receiving meals in reusable containers, and also send periodic reminders to clients and their families to return the containers. And finally, if a particular client isn't returning the containers, you can provide their meal in a disposable moving forward. However you plan your reuse program, education and outreach is absolutely key. So make sure the staff and volunteers are on the same page before you start. And also you'll need to budget that you're going to lose 20% of the trays, especially in the beginning. Dishwashing, sanitation, and health. So the clients are asked to rinse the trays. They do not need to wash them. If you need to buy a dishwasher or hire a dishwasher, it's still cost effective over disposable trays to purchase and wash your own trays. Commercial dishwashers are extremely efficient and can wash hundreds of dish trays in under an hour. And because their rinse cycle reaches high temperatures, they'll air dry quickly so that you can stack them and put them away for the next day. More dishwashing, sanitation, and health. So most likely your program, because your feeding program is already preparing and serving food, so you already know the requirements for food safety. It's important to keep the used or dirty trays separate from fresh trays. You also need to keep them separate from food that's going to be served and from food prep areas. Also, the trays must be air dried. This is a health department requirement, so another benefit of commercial dishwashers. And a separate permit is not required to wash your own trays. Funding. So we've looked for funds out there that can help you front the cost of reusable trays. Plastic Free Restaurants is a nonprofit organization that subsidizes reusable meal containers, and they will reimburse you up to 50 cents per reusable plastic container. They provide even more funds if the container is not made of plastic. You can also talk to your state legislators about including funds for reusables in the state budget. As I said, there's a strong argument for states to support this because of the benefits of preventing waste. And the less waste that we generate, the less municipalities have to spend to landfill or incinerate plastic. And finally, Rotary clubs are in most cities in the US, and they also provide small grants for community projects. If you want to ask your state legislators for funding, the guide provides a cover letter and the sample memo that I mentioned that you can adapt for your program. I recommend reaching out though and asking for a constituent meeting. So meet with your legislative office and talk to them about the benefits of providing funding for reuse in the state budget. Once you have the funding, where to buy the trays. So Beyond Plastics, we don't sell trays. We're not selling anything because we're a nonprofit, but we can point you to vendors that do sell trays. even though we don't advocate for any one particular vendor, and you can find this list in the guide. And if dishwashing isn't feasible, the guide will also give you ideas of where you might be able to find dishwashing services. So you can look into those. Just to give you an idea of the impact that reuse could have for Meals on Wheels, we know that demand for meals is going up because our population is aging, and also COVID really spiked the demand. It went up 80% at the height of the pandemic. But conservatively, we can say from the data we have that Meals on Wheels serves at least 2.5 million seniors, and we estimate about 646 million meals are served a year. Again, this is conservative. So that many meals served in these single-use 3-compartment polyethylene containers represents 45.5 million pounds of plastic waste and 1.1 million cubic yards of landfill space every year. So that's why we're doing this project, and we want to help you and connect you with resources. We hope you'll agree that the benefits outweigh the cons. Again, the guide is available on our website at beyondplastics.org/mealsonwheels, and you'll get the link to it in the follow-up email after today's program. And also you can follow Beyond Plastics. We're on all the major social media channels and our website, beyondplastics.org. So that is my time, and thank you for listening. I'm going to pass it over now to Renee A. Schleman, who is the Support Program Associate with the Aging and Disability Resource Center in St. Croix County, Wisconsin.
Hi there. A lot of what I'm going to actually present was actually in Alexis's PowerPoint as well. So some of the information might be duplicative, but it's what we presented in November for that conference, the Meals on Wheels conference then. Great, we can go to the next slide then. I'm not as tech savvy or wanting to be tech savvy today, so Alexis is going to run my slides for me. So the history of St. Croix County, we have been using these trays for many, many years, 20 plus years actually, and they have changed throughout the year. I think Alexis had shown one of the black trays in her presentation. We are now with just the mainly using leads, reusable trays. We have 3 different versions or 2 different versions, deep bottoms or the standard bottoms with standard lids or raised lids, depending on whichever one our site, each of our sites are comfortable using. Most of our sites use the leads reusable standard tray with the standard lid because you can fit more of them in the bags. And we do have some of our routes that are pretty long, about 14 or 16 meals per route. So they use those so they can fit more in there. So if you turn to the next slide, we send out a letter to any new participant explaining how the home delivered meal program works here in St. Croix County. And then we do remind them about the containers. You see a little snippet there that they are not oven safe, but they are microwavable, and they work in the dishwasher if they do wish to wash them in the dishwasher. We just ask, as Alexis said in her presentation, we do ask that they rinse them out to the best of their ability, and then leave them in the same location for the driver to take back the following day. We have notified them if they fail to return them that we may bill them for those because the trays are not a cheap purchase. But we have yet in the 20 years I've been here charged anybody for the trays. Great, next one. As you see here in the pictures, it kind of shows a variety of the sizes that we use and how many you can fit in each bag. We use this image to allow the site managers at our senior centers to pick the bags that they needed when we were ordering those carriers. We chose the Velcro style instead of zipper, just that we've noticed that the zippers break frequently. It's harder for our volunteers to open. They weren't closing them Once they opened them, these lids are a lot easier for you to open, and they stay, the meals stay very warm in them. During COVID, when we transitioned to styrofoam, we still use these carriers, but they didn't hold as many just due to the size difference between styrofoam and our normal hard side containers. Next slide. We do ask that they do not put the used containers that come back from the participant in with the filled, well, what do you kind of call it? The new home delivered meal, the warm meal that's going out. So we do ask that the volunteers either bring a paper bag, some of our paid drivers bring either a milk crate or a plastic tub to put the containers that they're getting back. We just don't want any cross contamination between the old container and anything that new that's going out to the participant. Next slide. We do have 9 nutrition sites throughout St. Croix County. One of them is now going to be a restaurant model. So all of our trays there will be washed in their commercial dishwasher. And then one of our senior centers has to do a 3-step method because it does not have a commercial dishwasher. And then our other 7 sites use either pass-through or an under-counter commercial dishwasher. When Alexis was showing her cost analysis, I know our pass-through dishwashers are at least $15,000 over here, and our under-counter are less, or right around $7,000 or $8,000. So I don't know if that's a difference of region of cost for equipment, but we don't have to replace them very often. All right, next slide. And here is kind of the cycle of the containers. Storage is pretty easy. They all fit together. The lids fit together as well. They're stored upside down in the cupboards that we have at our senior centers. We don't own the buildings that our senior centers are located in, but we do have space that they allow us to have to store our containers. One of our senior centers is within a church, so we have to keep those in a large plastic tote to carry back and forth into the kitchen, but they are not put in there until they are dry. We do have a space at that location where we can air dry everything, but as it shows here, that we store them, pack them, deliver, return, wash, store again, pack. So that's the cycle that we have here. Next slide. And then, as Alexis pointed out, the pros and cons. We, during COVID, went through, and we still are going through, quite a few styrofoam containers. They were very hard to get a hold of. It didn't matter where we were shopping. So we were very happy when we were able to go back to our hard side containers. The pros are they keep the food a lot warmer than styrofoam. Like I said, they're dishwasher and microwavable safe. So if an individual doesn't eat their meal at the time of delivery, they put it in the refrigerator, they can heat it up right there in that container. They're very durable. We have not had to replace very many of them over the years. They fit nicely in our carriers that we purchased. We don't have a lot of spillage, and the storage is pretty easy. Some of the cons with the containers is that depending on the meal, it can look a little squished in there. And then people tend to like them quite a bit, so they forget to return them. I have seen them on people's garage sales, and I have seen them on estate sales. So we try to get them back when somebody discontinues the program, but that is one problem that we do have. And the upfront cost. But I'll tell you, it's definitely worth it. Right now, though, we are having a supply chain issue. So when I place my order through Meals on Wheels store, I can expect to not see a product for at least 3 to 4 months, depending on their supply chain. All right, next slide. Or is that my last one? I think that is. All right. So
thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Renee.
Nope, that's it. I will just wait for questions at the end if anybody has any.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your continued support and everything you've done for this project. And now I'll pass it over to Becky Bruno. who is the Senior Meals Program Manager with Spectrum Community Services at Alameda County, California.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Renee. That was very informative too. So I'm going to see if I can start my slideshow and share it. And so I am being my own tech. So let's see if I do this correctly. You're seeing the whole screen now? Yes?
Yes, we.
Okay,
Yep.
great. So I'm with Spectrum Community Services, and we're serving many sites in Alameda County. We are Meals on Wheels, but I am overseeing our congregate dining, so it's not for the homebound. We prepare our meals each morning in our main kitchen in Hayward, and we deliver to 12 partner sites throughout the county. And not all of our sites are participating, but since we were congregate dining, that meant that the seniors are active and mobile, and they came to our various sites to eat together. And then with COVID, all of a sudden, shelter in place took a hold. So we had to package our meals so that the seniors could take them away. And so we became distribution sites rather than dining sites. And the seniors would still come and pick up their meal from these sites. But all of a sudden, we were required to have takeaway containers, which were never in our budget before. And we actually, when the pandemic first started, we closed our kitchen and partnered with a neighboring Meals on Wheels to do the homebound meals. So we did that for 18 months. And so when we were returning to our own kitchen, after 18 months of being closed, we were having to decide on the cost of getting the takeaway containers. And we were finding that the disposable single use were very expensive, and the supply chain, it was very erratic. We didn't know if we would get it or not. So we definitely were considering reusable. And it was just 1 year ago that I was listening to a information panel that was hosted by Stop Waste, and they had presented us with several vendors in our area that offer the reusable container service. And we partnered with Sparkle Reusable. Much like Alexis said, the reason why we were considering a vendor is that we do not have the space to wash and dry the containers ourselves for the meals that we're sending out. So we have 8 of our location sites are participating, and so that's about 300 meals using the reusable containers each day. And we're using 2 containers most of the days for the type of meal that we're serving. And in addition to the containers, we are providing reusable bags. So again, in order to prepare for this change of the equipment, because people weren't used to returning the disposable containers, we had to make sure that our sites were trained as well as the participants. And so there were welcome letters and introductions. And then and included in the reusable bag, there is a little attached tag, and it indicates how to care for the containers. Because they are microwavable, they are dishwasher safe, but not oven safe, and we don't want them cutting with sharp utensils in them, but also asking for them to be returned. So our day-to-day routine has become that we count out the clean containers to match our meal count that's going to the sites, and these get delivered in clean, sealed, big zipper bags. Most of our sites are serving anywhere from 30 to 70 meals. So we batch them, and then they will be delivered along with the food, which is also batched in hotel pans that go in Cambros and coolers. The sites will receive the clean containers, and the volunteers at the sites are then filling the containers following our portioning guides. And so as you see, we have the clamshell as well as a lidded bowl. And this helps us keep our cold components separate from our hot components. And we often have soup. So that's the reason for the 2 different containers in our program. I talked about the 2 containers, but it's keeping them separate. So the hot items will go in the clamshell often, or maybe we'll have a big cold salad entree with the soup. So we use the 2 containers just depending on what's on the menu for that day. The seniors will bring back their container, and we make sure that we have a collection bag, and often there will be a volunteer that is handling the dirties, and then a different volunteer is handing out the clean meals that have been handed. We make sure that they don't touch the clean containers after they've handled the dirties that are coming back. And then after the lunch service, the drivers, we have, 4 different routes. And so one driver goes to 4 different sites and will pick up all the containers along with the meal supplies and the Cambros and the coolers that were delivered that day. And they bring them back to our main kitchen in Hayward. And then our vendor will pick up the dirties each day and also drop off a clean supply that is for the next day. So that is how we're managing with the cycle that is not impacting our own space. And we're very grateful because right now we don't have a working dishwasher. And so this would have really impacted it if we didn't have a service. We've been waiting 7 months for our dishwasher to be repaired. So we're doing the 3-compartment washing for all of our cooking. And we would hate to have to do that with these containers too. So what we've kind of learned along the way is that our return rate is extremely dependent on clear communication. As a congregate program, we don't have the same people every day. They are registered, so we have, everybody is within our program, but they may come to us maybe once or twice a week, or maybe even just once a month. It depends on their own schedule, their desires. And so for those infrequent diners, we have to really stress, please return your container. And then at first we didn't have our containers marked. As Alexis mentioned, there are stickers that can be applied. And so we are in the slow process of trying to apply these stickers to all the containers. But we have more containers than the vendor has of the stickers. And so we think that's impacted our rate. So I would definitely say make sure that your containers are marked. It was really exciting with this program. We have the Story of Stuff project was doing a topic of solving plastic, and they came out and featured our program. And so I'd love to share the video that they just created. So let's see. That just.
We can't hear the sound, but there is music.
There's music?
It's just music, yeah. It's not yeah.
And so that was pretty exciting. There we go. Yep. So that is our congregate program using the reusable containers.
Thank you so much, Becky. It's really exciting to see the video come to life, and it just brought it all together. So we have plenty of time left over for questions. So if you have a question, feel free to take yourself off mute to ask either Becky or Renee, or you can put your question in the chat and I can direct it for you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Herb.
I'm Director of Nutrition for the NEK Council on Aging. How about frozen meals? Can you put frozen meals in the reusable boxes? Do they freeze well?
Either of you want to take that question on?
Ours have a little bit of a gap, I think, between the meal and the actual meal and the lid. So there will probably be a little bit of frost buildup. We haven't done any frozen meals in them. The only type of frozen meals we used to provide were all in tin, or not tin, but aluminum
Yeah.
with the cover, which is hard for some of our seniors to open. And it's another wasteful product with just that. And then they have to take it out and heat it as well. It's just, our type of containers, I don't know about the ones that Becky uses, would freeze well. No, we have not done ours. I can tell you that.
Okay. And how many times do you get to reuse those containers before you have to replace them?
For our program, the clamshells, it is stated they are good for at least 300 uses. We've only been in operation since October, so ours is more of maybe we have some breakage. We have the class break, and then there's some of them if the clients are microwaving them too high or too long, so we have microwave damage. But as far as them deteriorating and not being usable, we haven't been in long enough to determine.
And just one last question. I understand they're not oven safe, but can you hot hold food in those at all? At say 140 degrees? Is that something that's?
We only have a hot box at one of our senior centers and haven't tried, or a Henny, if that's what you want to call it, a holding box. We haven't tried that. We just purchased that hot box like 6 months ago. I could have them try it out and see how that works, but none of our vans are equipped with those types of plug-in hot boxes, because we're delivering within under an hour to all of our people. If we were to have just one central kitchen and that's where all of the home delivered meals would be dispersed, then we would have to look at that. The Meals on Wheels store where we purchase them has all of that, would have that on their website, how high the temp can be. It's just the oven safe stuff. They burn, nobody puts it on a pan. They put it right in the oven. And so we had burn marks on the bottom of ours.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Herb. Good to see you here. There was a question in the chat about there being any concern with consumers being able to take the lids off. I think this is for you, Renee.
There's a little bit of a vacuum pack, but if you look at the container, the bottom has 2 notches and the lid has 1, so they fit. You can usually grab from that 1 notch and then open them up and take them apart. We haven't had anybody with arthritis. I think the only problem that they've had at times is it maybe sucks down if it's, really hot food. People have more of a issue opening a milk carton than they do the home delivered meal containers.
One other note on, go ahead.
The soup container, if we put hot soup in it, it also has that tendency to get on too tight as the soup cools. And so one of the things that we do recommend is right before it's being served, sometimes the volunteers, we ask the volunteer to loosen it and tighten it again to let that heat out. And then we tell them if they're going to not eat the hot item in the soup right away, they're going to put it in the refrigerator, that they should loosen the lid before they put it in the refrigerator if they're saving it for later. So our soup lidded bowls are the only one that we've had feedback on, that they're hard to open if something was too hot in it.
Yeah, and just one more note on these containers. So sometimes in our home Tupperware containers, there is a silicone band around the inside of the lid, but these containers don't have that. Both of these styles don't have that band, and that's what causes, that can collect moisture and create mold. So because these don't have the silicone band, they seal without them. You have much less risk of forming mold on these containers. Any other questions for Renee or Becky? Well, if there's no other questions, I would really love to hear from you. If you're with a program or with the state agency and you're interested in reuse, please feel free to reach out to me. If you're planning to do reusables, or you want more information, or you want to get connected with Renee or Becky, I'm going to send the recording and the guide in the follow-up email right after this event. So you can just email me right back if you want to chat. And if you do decide to switch to reusables, we definitely want to hear about it, because we are trying to share this information with meal programs across the country. So thank you, Renee and Becky, for everything you've contributed to this project. I really appreciate you, and I know Beyond Plastics does too. And we'll let people go early and get back some of their day. Take care, everybody.